Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Avana. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotra Sada Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtikhi. Today we are continuing to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2, entitled Ajamila delivered by the Vishnu Dudas. Text 41. Tato gunebhya atmanam viyujjatma samadhina yuyujje bhagavadhamni Brahmani anubhavatmani tato gunebhya atmanam viyujjatma samadhina yuyujje bhagavadhamni Brahmani anubhavatmani tato gunebhya atmanam Viyujjatma samadhina Yuyujje bhagavadhamni Brahmani anubhavatmani. Tato gunebhya atmanam viyujjatma samadhina yuyujje bhagavadhamni Brahmani anubhavatmani. Tato gunebhya atmanam viyujjatma samadhina yuyujje bhagavadhamni Brahmanyanubhavatmani. Tato gunebhya atmanam viyujyatma samadhinam yuyujye bhagavadhamni brahmani anubhavatmani. Tato gunebhya atmanam viyujyatma samadhinam yuyujye bhagavadhamni brahmani anubhavatmani. Tato gunebhya atmanam viyujyatma samadhinam yuyujye bhagavadhamni brahmanyanubhavatmani. Word to word meaning. Tataha, thereafter. Gunebhyaha, from the modes of material nature. Atmanam, the mind. Yuyujya, detaching. Atma samadhina, by being fully engaged in devotional service. Yuyujye, engaged. Bhagavad Dhamni, in the form of the Lord. Brahmani, which is Parabrahman, not idol worship. Anubhava Atmani, which is always thought of, beginning from the lotus feet and gradually progressing upward. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Ajamila fully engaged in devotional service. Thus, he detached his mind from the process of sense gratification and became fully absorbed in thinking of the form of the Lord. Purport. If one worships a deity in the temple, one's mind will naturally be absorbed in thought of the Lord and His form. There is no distinction between the form of the Lord and the Lord Himself. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga is the most easy method of yoga. Yogis try to concentrate their minds upon the form of the Super Soul, Vishnu, within the heart. But this same objective is easily achieved when one's mind is absorbed in the deity worshipped in the temple. In every temple there is a transcendental form of the Lord, and one may easily think of this form. By seeing the Lord during Arati, by offering Bhoga, and by constantly thinking of the form of the deity, one becomes a first-class yogi. This is the best process of yoga as confirmed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhagavad Gita 6.47. Yoginam api sarvesham madgate nantatmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam same yukta tamo mataha. Of all the yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. The first-class yogi is he who controls his senses and detaches himself from material activities by always thinking of the form of the Lord. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sma Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sanjeevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Partha Dhanurtara Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Wherever there is Lord Krishna and wherever His glories are sung and wherever His disciples like Arjuna are there, certainly a list of things are given which exist. What are they? Yeah, Shri, will, victory, morality, opulence, and then determination. Dhruva, Nitir, Matir, Mama. The constant theme of the previous at least 4 or 5 purports, the theme has been determination. And Prabhupada is emphasizing taking the determination of Ajamila after he is given the second chance, how one has to follow this same determination in one's devotional service. Then the power of the holy name as being brought out in this entire episode of Ajamila. The power of association of the devotees, even a short momentary association, what it does. Now, in the previous verse, Prabhupada brings about and encourages by highlighting the advantages of staying in a temple. And he uses this opportunity to present the culture of going to holy places, then staying in those holy places, staying in temples, and perfecting oneself in the later part of their life, which is the Vanaprastha stage as prescribed in the Varnashrama. So here in this verse today, despite this section being the glories of the holy name, the importance of deity worship is being brought out. And the significance of performing deity worship, the effect of it, and how one who is materially conditioned should take advantage of this deity worship to come out of this material conditioning and engage in the Lord's service. So to begin, I thought of taking the sequence of steps which Prabhupada describes in the 15th chapter, 20th verse, about how the fall down sequence begins. There is a fall down sequence described in chapter 2 as well, by Lord Krishna himself. But Prabhupada more emphatically describes that in the 15th chapter. 15th chapter begins with the emphasis on detachment. That being the solution which is presented initially, Prabhupada will later on describe the sequence of steps. The living entity first has a general distractedness or a tendency towards lording over material nature. So that's the first step that's being described. Then the crucial next step is that the living entity gives up the Lord's service. Now once you are out of the protection in the form of the Lord's service, you've given up the tendency to serve the Lord, which is your natural propensity. Then you are going to increase your propensity to lord over material nature further. That's the next step. You give up the Lord's service, then the illusory energy is going to attract you further. And because you are showing that inclination and that propensity, that increases further. Now, here is where it gets more specific. Rather than a general distraction to enjoy material nature, it becomes very specific that I will enjoy through a particular medium, through a particular form. Then finally, Prabhupada describes, you're so attached to the matter and the pleasure that you derive from matter, and you want to possess more and more of material things. It has gone very specific, and very specific possession of matter which you think will give you happiness. Now, applying this on Ajamila, a person from a pious background who was from a good birth, Brahmanical background, very high birth, still that enjoying propensity was there, the heart was not fully pure. Then he sees the scene of a Shudra embracing a Shudrani. Now here is where the enjoying propensity, so he is giving up the service to the Lord. He went to collect paraphernalia to assist his parents. So that he gives up and he contemplates on the form which is attractive to the eyes, and the act which is forbidden in public. He sees two persons engaging in that act of embracing, and then the service to the Lord is given up, and then he starts meditating on that. It is getting more specific. So propensity to a general desire becomes more specific, that I will enjoy through this particular form. Then as we know, because the service of the Lord is given up, there is no more protection for you, and the only attraction is towards matter, and then now it is more specifically directed towards this living entity, and by that company I'll be happy. So that's when it becomes more specific, and then you increase your propensity to lord over material nature, and then to fulfill that one desire, then you are attached to possession of matter. So that's how Ajamila had to give up his service, his parents, his loyal wife, then get into the company of the prostitute, and then we know the whole story. So, a general desire, giving up of the Lord's service, and very specific desire or propensity to enjoy over matter, and then you're attached to possessing matter and enjoying that. So, this fall down sequence, even though described by Prabhupada towards the end, he gives the solution that Lord Krishna has stated in the beginning of the chapter, which is asanga shastrena dridena chitva. So you are encouraged to cut the hard knot with the weapon of detachment. So that was what was discussed in the chapter 15 in the beginning, that Krishna encourages, urges, and he expects the living entity to get out of this entanglement through the sword of detachment. Now the sword is given to the living entity by Lord Krishna, but the strength to lift the sword and to actually cut, that strength is given by Lord Balaram in the form of spiritual master. Now, in Ajamila's case, his spiritual masters have been the Vishnudutas through their discussion of the potency of the holy name, and that is elevating him. That moment's association with the exalted Vaishnavas, who are representative of the Lord himself, just as we say, Bhagavatam as Sukhamukad Amrutadriva Samyutam, the holy name, that potency is being heard through the mouth of the Vishnudutas who are living in that culture of constantly chanting, glorifying, seeing and worshipping the Lord. So when you hear from realized souls who are living that lifestyle, then it has got immense potency. And that acts as like a sword, and that helps Ajamila to get out of the attachment that has been there in the heart, the hard knot, Hridaya Granthi. Ata griha kshetra suta apti vittair janasya mohoyam aham mama iti. So in that section, the next verse itself will talk about how the hard knot is getting cut by association of the devotees. In Ajamila's case, it's happening through the association of the Vishnudutas. Now, just as there is a fall down sequence described in the 15th chapter, 16th chapter, 21 and 22 talks about how a living entity can rise from the fallen state. One has to escape the gates of lust, anger and greed. In Ajamila's case, the hard knot is cut and he is giving up his lust, anger and greed through the association. So first step is he is escaping those three gates. Dwaram, Nashanam, Atmanam. Kamas, Krota, Tatalobha, Tasmat Etat, Trayam, Tyajit. He has gone up to the verge of entering hell. In Ajamila's case, he has gone up to the verge of entering hell through the agency of the Yamadutas. And they have listed all the sins that he has committed. And he is about to be taken to hell. But something extraordinary happened. Helpless calling out of the Lord's name neutralized all the sins that he had committed, and the association of the Vishnudutas elevated him further. Now he comes back to senses, and the rules that is laid down in the Vedas, he remembers, and what he has to do, he is doing now. He leaves the company of the prostitute and his family. Vanam gatoyat harimashayeta. So then he goes to Haridwar. That particular age that he is in, probably in his 80s, it is a ripe age for Vanaprastha, and then if you are more mature, you may take sannyas. So he is situating himself. This situating oneself, Krishna describes that Prakriti Sthani. Prakriti Stha means you're situated in Prakriti, and then you're bound. Karshati, you're struggling. From there, the hard knot is cut. Now he is escaping the gates of lust, anger and greed. So the next progression for the raising up sequence is you follow the rules in the Vedas. Now by following the rules in the Vedas, what happens is you are raising yourself to the platform of spiritual realization. Then cultivation of knowledge happens. Now in case of Ajamila, he is receiving, his knowledge is being revived when he hears the conversation between the Vishnudutas and the Yamadutas. So cultivation of knowledge happens and he is raising to spiritual realization. And that's what you will see, the set of verses, he is lamenting. I think volume is too high, may I have to. He is lamenting that how abominable I am and how glorious is the Lord, how glorious is the power of the holy name. And then the repentance, the sincerity comes out, and he is able to see that how this one utterance is able to bring such a transformation. Let me indulge in this further. Let me engage in devotional service further. So he is raising to the spiritual realization. Then, as described in 16.22 purport, you start applying the rules of Varnashrama. In this case, Ajamila goes to the holy place, Vanam Gato Yat Harimashrayeta. Is applying the rules of Varnashram, and then the final stage of the raising up sequence is you attain perfection in devotional service and you also attain liberation. So this is the sequence, and we also saw how it is applied in Ajamila's life. Through the association of the Vishnudutas, he escapes the gate of lust, anger, greed. His Vedic knowledge, all that is revived. He is raising himself to the spiritual platform, spiritual realization. He is applying the rules of Varnashrama. Then he is attaining perfection in devotional service. And that's what here Ajamila fully engaged in devotional service. And thus he detached his mind from the process of sense gratification and became fully absorbed in thinking of the form of the Lord. He got attracted by a form, a material form. That distraction, that fall down sequence, all of that happened. Now the raising up sequence is facilitated by the holy place, by the holy name, and by the holy form of the Lord. And that holy form of the Lord, why we have to meditate, what happens, that is what is being brought out in the purport. Even though this section describes the glories of the holy name, it's interesting to note that in this particular purport, Prabhupada emphasizes on engaging in deity worship. This word Bhagavad Dhamni is being translated as in the form of the Lord. He is situated in a holy place, he is chanting the holy name, and he is also worshipping the holy form of the Lord, and his mind is now meditating on the thought of the Lord. More specific details are not given, but I am assuming that Haridwar there will be a deity form of the Lord, holy place. Some of you might have gone to Haridwar, I'm not sure. What's the name of the deity? You remember? Okay, but some deity form is there of the Lord. Is it Lord Narayan or Radha Krishna? Okay. That's okay. Yeah. There's a form of Shiva as well. You gone to Haridwar? Okay, okay. So, some form of a deity is there and is being worshipped, and he is participating in the worship and he is focusing his mind on the form of the Lord. Now that, coming back to the point on that which distracted you, the material form, can be overcome by detaching yourself from that and focusing on the fully transcendental spiritual form of the Lord. That was my point on that which binds you when therapeutically applied can deliver you. It's one of the example Prabhupada gives from the Bhagavatam is that the diarrhea which is created by milk can be fixed by another milk product, which is curd or yogurt. So, the material form binds you, then you cut with the sword of detachment. That alone will not help you enter the Lord's abode. You have to have a positive engagement, positive devotional service. For that, bhajate is used. For bhaja means there must be bhakta, Bhagavan and bhakti. So Bhagavan appears in the form of the holy place, holy name, and here more specifically the Archa Vigraha. That's why in the bracket Prabhupada says not idol worship. Now some guidelines are also given about how to see the form of the Lord, starting from the lotus feet and gradually progressing upward. So I came across this article from ISKCON Desire Tree, which I thought is very relevant, about how the chanting of the holy name and worshipping the deity, they fit together and they are like two parallel tracks. So one may question and quote Shastra and quote Bhagavatam also to say that holy name alone is sufficient. Then why do we have to worship the deities? So Prabhupada puts it in a nice way that deity worship and chanting of the holy name go on in parallel tracks. So just as for a train to move there, you need two tracks. These two paths, they work as parallels. These two tracks, vidhis, required to walk safely on the spiritual path. So one is the Raga Marga, which is the path of Shravanam, Kirtanam, hearing, chanting, and the other is the Vidhi Marga, which is the Pancharatrika. So that's where the deity worship comes in picture. I mean, many devotees in the congregation are already exalted by having deities at home, worshipping, and they know the rules of such worship. Now the significance is being brought out here. The way Prabhupada introduced this in the West is initially he gave the holy name, the holy books and the holy prasad to get the devotees to come to the level of human beings, then following the rules and regulations gradually, and when they are mature enough, then he introduced the concept of deity worship. So this is from 1.12.13 purport. The Pancharatrika system acts on the Sudra class of men, supposedly the population of the Kali Yuga, and it is a prescribed purificatory process suitable to the age and time. Such a purificatory process is allowed only for spiritual upliftment and not for any other purpose. So why the deity worship, the installation of the deities, having a temple? Because following the Goswamis, if Prabhupada also sat under a tree and started to preach, he said no one will want to come and listen. But if deities are installed, then you have elaborate worship, then a nicely maintained temple, people would be interested to come, see the deities, and thereby hear the spiritual knowledge which is being propagated in the spiritual centers, or they are like the embassies of the spiritual world. The temples are supposed to be the embassies of the spiritual world, and when people come, they'll also get a chance to hear. Now the advantage of a person who is worshipping the deity, here as being brought out in this particular purport, is that you're constantly thinking on the form of the Lord. Okay, I have to cook for the deities, what time is it, at this particular time, what will the deities have, then accordingly you start cooking. Then if you have to dress the deities, okay, what time of the day is it? And then accordingly the garlands have to match, accordingly the ornaments have to match. Now the form of the Lord is constantly in your mind, and all your thoughts, your actions, all of that is directed towards the service, towards rendering service to the Lord. And by this what happens? Detachment from matter automatically happens. And because you are focusing on your body, mind and words in the service of the Lord, one naturally comes out of the bodily consciousness. As described in the previous purports, coming out of the bodily consciousness is a crucial step. And that happens when one worships the deity. So from 4.8.52 purport, Prabhupada says, the Archana Marga, or the devotional path prescribed in the Pancharatra system of devotional service of worshipping the deity in the temple, makes the devotee think constantly of the Lord. That is samadhi or trance. One who practices in this way cannot deviate from the service of the Lord, and that makes him perfect in the mission of human life. So this Pancharatra system is given to us by, at least for within ISKCON we follow the Narada Pancharatra, which is given to us by Narad Muni, to facilitate, to give us the rules and regulations, the do's and the don'ts in worshipping the deity. And to elaborate further on this, Prabhupada in his Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 15.108 purport talks about this point about balancing chanting and hearing versus deity worship. The Bhagavatam enjoins that even without practicing deity worship, one can achieve the complete success of human life by any of the other devotional processes, such as simply offering. So we have the list of processes given by Prahlad Maharaj, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, which is chanting, hearing, remembering, and one of them is deity worship. Bhagavatam says that one can achieve perfection. Here then comes the catch. In Kali Yuga, most of them are in bodily consciousness. So that's why the next statement is there. Nonetheless, Vaishnavas following the path of Sri Narada and his successors endeavor to establish a personal relationship with the Lord. And this involves many steps. So first is you get initiated. You receive the grace of a bona fide spiritual master in the tradition, and then you take the next step of approaching the deity as a representative of that spiritual master. So in this way you engage in deity worship. So Prabhupada continues, although deity worship is not essential, the material conditioning of most candidates for devotional service requires that they engage in this activity. When we consider their bodily and mental conditions, we find that the character of such candidates is impure and their minds are agitated. Therefore, to rectify this material conditioning, the great sage Narada and others have at different times recommended various kinds of regulations for deity worship. So now we clearly understand the goal of perfection can be achieved only by chanting and hearing, as Bhagavatam says. But I am conditioned, I am materially attached, my mind is agitated to engage myself in pure chanting at the level of Srila Haridas Thakur and other exalted devotees and attain perfection is not possible. Therefore, by the mercy of Narad Muni and for us through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we have a system of worshipping the deities which helps us to purify the mind, to helps us to regulate the agitated mind, and to see the form of the Lord, which helps the conditioned soul to, which is used to seeing material forms. When the same conditioning, when it is turned towards seeing the form of the Lord, which is spiritual, then as in the case of Ajamila, that same propensity is getting purified. Because what he saw, a form engaging in embracing another form, and then he meditated on that further and further, and then he degraded from his position. Now the same propensity is applied. You meditate on the form of the Lord, see how the Lord is decorated, then you start meditating, then you want to engage in his service. So then all his memories will come back, right? He was going to collect paraphernalia to do worship, and that's where all of this happened. All of that memories come back, so then he raises himself to the spiritual standard. His conditioning is removed, his agitated mind is now pacified, thereby enabling him to get out of the material conditioning and focus on the form of the Lord. Yeah, there is a further quote which talks about the more one is freed from material identification, the more one can realize that the spirit soul is qualitatively as good as the Supreme Soul. So having established the need for both chanting and the deity worship, what exactly are the steps involved in the Pancharatra? It's taken from His Holiness Bhakti Vidyapurna Swami's lecture or seminar on this. In Pancharatra there are elaborate steps, but in general it can be put under 5 steps. So to begin worship, you need to have some preliminary activities. So you purify yourself, you cleanse your body and mind, you put on clean clothes, you offer obeisances to your spiritual master. So this is like the preliminary activities that we do. Putting tilak, and those who are given the Gayatri Mantras, you chant the Gayatri Mantras. So this is the preliminary activities, that's the first step. Then the second is, for performing worship, what are all the items that we need? So you start collecting. So that's why in the manuals, so when the deity worship manuals, there was no soft copy, so I was given the service to start typing them. So there you have the list of items to collect for different types of worship. For Shaligram, there is a whole set of items to collect. Sometimes devotees collect them and keep them in the cool fridge the night before also, so that next morning when they come, it's ready. What this means is you start meditating that I'm going to do puja tomorrow, which means your meditation begins the previous evening or the night itself. You start thinking this is what the Lord would want, and you're starting to collect paraphernalia, items required, the flowers, then this particular set of dress, this particular set of jewelry, all of that. So you start collecting. Sometimes you collect it the day before, sometimes you collect it before the actual worship begins. Depending on the length and duration of the worship, it varies. So second step is collecting the required items. The third step is establishing that you are an eternal servant of Krishna. You are not a Brahmana, you are not a Vaishya, you are not a Kshatriya, you are not a Shudra, you are not a Brahmachari, you are not a Grihastha, you are not a Vanaprastha, you are not a Sannyasi. You are Gopi Bharatu Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasanu Dasa. This is called the Bhuta Suddhi prayers, where you establish, affirm yourself that you are an eternal servant of Krishna and you are a disciple and you are coming in this particular disciplic succession, and through that spiritual master you are going to offer your worship to the Lord. This is called yoga, or linking one's mind with the Supreme Lord. And the fourth step is where you actually do the worship with all the 16 upacharas. It doesn't end there. Fifth is the most crucial point, which is a personal meditation or cultivation of devotional service such as Shravanam and Kirtanam. In the deity worship also, the crucial step, the final step is Shravanam and Kirtanam. So this is how the two paths work parallelly, and they help each other. The mantras are constantly being chanted, holy name of the Lord is constantly being recited when the worship is happening. So that is why we hear, if you sit close to the altar and chant, you will hear devotees reciting mantras when they are worshipping the deities, ringing the bell, Purusha Shuktam will be chanted, or Brahma Samhita prayers will be chanted when the worship is happening. So the key point again is, worship doesn't mean that we don't glorify the Lord while the worship is happening. That is happening parallelly. The worship helps us more emphatically to come out of the bodily platform and help us give up the material attachments. So these are the 5 steps, which is Abhigamana, which is the preliminary activities, then Upadhanam, or collecting the items of worship, then third is the crucial step, which is yoga, linking one's mind. Fourth is ija, or the actual worship itself, and fifth is the swadhyaya, or the personal meditation or cultivation of devotional service such as Shravanam and Kirtanam. So this is how these two, Archana Vidhi Marg and the Vidhi Marg, they help each other and they run in parallel tracks. And in the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and also in the life of the Goswamis, we see this nicely demonstrated. Then the glories of the deities reciprocating with the devotees, and how personal reciprocation is being exchanged, that is being illustrated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself when he narrates the pastime of Madhavendra Puri, Sripad Madhavendra Puri, and his reciprocation with the deities. So this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela. The place is Govardhan. Sripad Madhavendra Puri is sleeping and taking rest. Now in the dream, the deity form appears and urges him, saying that I am stuck in the ground, come and rescue and take me out. So here is where the personal reciprocation of the Lord is starting. So the next morning, Madhavendra Puri goes out and he ducks the excavation, finds the deity. Are you able to keep it on silent, Mataji? So he excavates the deity from the jungle. Now once the deity is excavated, then we need to start rendering service. So service begins by installing, then doing all sorts of worship. So a lot of people get engaged, and with great pomp the deity is installed and worship, and all the offerings are happening. Okay. It doesn't end there. Now further reciprocation begins when Gopal deity again appears in the dream of Madhavendra Puri. Now he demands further. It's too hot. Now he wants sandalwood paste to be applied on his body. So Madhavendra Puri, despite the fact that there is no instant transport like what we have at this particular time, and at the mature age, he, for fulfilling the desire of the deities, he travels to Jagannath Puri. From there, he wanted to collect sandalwood and then apply it on his Gopal deity and please him. So he receives the order and then he starts going. So while traveling, on the way, he comes to this village in Bengal called as Remuna. One may think that I'm rendering service to one particular deity, only that deity will reciprocate. Here we see that the same Lord in different deity forms. Madhavendra Puri is coming from Govardhan. Deity in Bengal, Gopinath, he knows that my devotee is coming, so therefore the deity keeps aside, steals a pot of sweet rice, and then Gopinath appears in the dream of the pujari and then asks him to give this pot of sweet rice to Madhavendra Puri, who is visiting the temple. So the glory of the devotee is being broadcast by the Lord himself in the form of the deity by stealing a pot of sweet rice. And therefore the Lord is glorified by his action of serving his deity, his devotee. So he gets a name as Kirchor Gopinath, one who stole the sweet rice. Now Madhavendra Puri did not want to his name to be known everywhere, so to keep a low profile, he leaves immediately, and he is still focused on service to his deity Gopal to collect the sandalwood. So he collects, comes back, and again he visits Remuna, seeing the parishrama, the effort of his devotee, again traveling all the way and going up to Govardhan. Gopal deity appears in his Madhavendra Puri's dream and tells him that you apply the sandalwood to Gopinath, I will accept through him. So in this way, the reciprocation of the deities are also very personal. The Lord takes pleasure in serving the devotee, and the devotee takes pleasure in serving the deity. And that's how in the first chapter of the Gita, Prabhupada explains that there is a transcendental competition between the Lord and his devotees. Who is going to serve better? So in this way we see that deity worship is personal. It establishes that the Lord is a person. He has got preferences. He is not an idol. And devotees render service to him in that particular mood, and accordingly he will reciprocate. So I'll conclude there and see if there are any questions on what we discussed or any comments. Anybody wants to add something? Yes, Mataji. So you're saying you like seeing the deity more than chanting, and you're asking, is that okay? Now, seeing the deity form of the Lord, you are inspired to see him, and then through that inspiration, that is more in the form of neutrality, right? So then you go to the next step of how can I serve the Lord who is mercifully appeared. Then you start thinking about how to serve the Lord. So that will be the next progression. Then, as we discussed, you collect materials or you assist somebody who is worshipping the deity. Then what happens is you will get reciprocation from the Lord, and that will help you to chant better. And this adds to the inspiration. It's described as the uddipan, or the inspiration to worship and chant further and further increases. So in this way, one process aids the other. Shravanam and Kirtanam is the ultimate perfection for that. If worshipping, seeing the form of the Lord helps and helps us move further, so then we take it like that. So we don't become stagnant in one particular way of reciprocating the Lord. It's more of a dynamic way. So if you want to add something or...
So it's important that the deity, today in our lecture we were focusing on meditating on the form of the Lord. By doing devotional service, we are constantly thinking of the Lord. So the thing is, when we hear about Krishna, like for example, like we see on Sunday evening, Saturday evening, so many people come, right? So they just come and see the deities and they offer some milk or fruit or whatever, and they'll go, right? But they haven't heard about Krishna. They don't have full picture. Just think, okay, the deity is there. But we devotees in the temple, we are doing Shravanam Kirtanam. We are hearing Bhagavatam, we are reading Bhagavatam, we are serving the Lord. Then, we can appreciate the Lord much, much more than other people who come, general public who come and see the deities. So that's why it's important, very important that first, even though in deity worship, the main thing is, even though we do deity worship, the background of our deity worship should be Shravanam Kirtanam. That should never stop. Like Prabhu was telling, it will they both are aid each other, no? To become really strong in deity worship, to become a good devotee, Shravanam Kirtanam is the basis. That's why Prahalad Maharaj says, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasya. So very, very beginning initial is Shravanam. That should accompany the deity worship. Otherwise, in and of itself, so many deities, some devotees in temple also, they just do the deity worship. When it comes to hearing chanting, they don't really do very much. They may be doing in the course of little bit here and there, but this is very important. That keeps us fixed. When I have a knowledge about Krishna, like in 12th chapter also, in the beginning, Arjuna asked these two questions, that which is better, worshipping in personal form or impersonal form is better. But then Krishna says that, fix your mind. He says here, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great transcendental faith are considered to be the most perfect. So these are some things. And another thing, if it's okay, I can share. In the 7th canto also, like the very first chapter, we all know the Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. In that the 5 ways one can think of Krishna, still, actually the Bhakti definition is we should think of Krishna favorably, like Anya Abhilashita Jnana Karma, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. But Krishna is so merciful. Even these demons, they think of Krishna inimically or with hatred or like lusty, of course, gopis and all. So still the Lord is so merciful. So why? Because they are thinking of the Lord. That itself is so purifying that they are getting liberated. Like for example, Kamsa, right from the time he heard from this Akashvani that the 8th child of Devaki is going to kill him, right from that moment till he died, he was very Krishna conscious. very, very Krishna conscious. That's why Nardmuni says in that chapter also, the absorption of enmity is so absorbed that even I'm not like that, but he says out of his humility, that's another. So in that section of Bhagavatam, it is said that how to think of Krishna, how to meditate on the form of Krishna is very important. Ours is personalistic philosophy. So we have to think of the Lord in a personal way. And so this hearing and chanting will enhance our looking the deity more. But other general people who come Saturday, Sunday evening, they just see the Lord, they keep milk, then, not so much devotional contemplation will come when we hear chant. No? So that's why it's important. I don't know, Prabhu, whether I made the point or not. But thank you.
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvanda Maravindanalaya Taksham Bharavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Ikamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Asa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Lasyan Dipan Dikaya